Fentanyl. It could be hiding anywhere, including in your house, including in your medicine cabinet, or maybe at a friend's house when you're hanging out, playing games, and get offered a pill. Don't take chances. If a drug didn't come from a pharmacy directly to you, you can find fentanyl using a simple strip you can pick up at your local pharmacy. Don't take it until you test it, because fentanyl can be hiding anywhere. Brought to you by the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Mental Disabilities.
You don't want to be a loser. You don't want bad experiences and negative emotions to darken the doorstep of your life, right? Maybe you do. You're listening to the Health Courage Collective podcast, episode 147, Embrace Your Inner Loser. Welcome to the Health Courage Collective podcast, the show for women who are too busy to slog through hours of generalized, inapplicable, and often contradictory health information, but too smart to ignore that a few minutes of focused attention now can prevent years of suffering in the future. I'm your host, Christina Hackett, a pharmacist who doesn't want you to live on prescriptions, a certified coach specifically trained to maximize your potential, and a compulsive learner obsessed with preventative, cutting-edge, holistic, and integrative medicine. I'm on a mission to increase your physical and mental resilience so you can fearlessly look forward to your next 40-plus limitless years. Your time is now. Let's go. Hello, my friend, and welcome to the episode. I'm so happy you're here today. How is your toolbox? Have you stopped seeing all the health and wellness advice as an overwhelming list of necessary things that you'll never have enough willpower to be able to do? That's what we're led to believe, and it can feel pretty defeating. Now you know that all tools are just a means to an end, and you need to start with a clear design for what you're wanting to build first. And that makes picking the tools you need and all the others that you don't way easier. Today, we're going to talk about being a loser. Are you a loser? I am sometimes. In order to have a good life, one worth living, we need to stay positive. Focus on the positive, change negative thoughts and moods to positive ones, be happy, look happy, and make others happy, right? In her book, Bittersweet, author Susan Cain explains how the United States is very focused on positivity and cheerfulness, but not all countries are. I pretty naively didn't realize that that's one of our cultural differences. Like other differences, it has its pros and cons. I'm all for being cheerful and having a positive attitude, but is there potential harm in what Harvard psychologist Susan David calls the tyranny of positivity? Isn't that such a great term? The tyranny of positivity can be seen in all parts of American culture. You need to smile in every photo, celebrate the birth of your country and the birth of a new year and the birth of your friends and family with fireworks and over-the-top parties. We focus on birth of new things, ideas, people, companies, and relationships. We want to appear to be successful, happy, young, and without care forever. It's kind of a given. Does that mean that we are happier? In Tibet, they turn their water glasses over at night in acknowledgement that they might die before the next morning. They also write their wishes and dreams on flags that will be exposed to wind that will tear them apart piece by piece. Mexicans have the Day of the Dead to make sure we don't just celebrate birth. It provides balance. Interestingly, Susan Cain points out that even American sympathy cards are very colorful with phrases that subtly deny our right to grieve, like, "May loving memories warm your heart," whereas typical sympathy cards in Germany are usually black and white and say things like, "in deep sadness." I think Susan Cain's ideas about why we're all so brainwashed by the tyranny of positivity is interesting. She says that it's because Americans are conditioned to see ourselves deep down as either winners or losers, and we want to be in group number one. Do you agree that you don't want to be considered by anyone, even yourself secretly, as a loser? Susan Cain is a lawyer, so she makes a very convincing case using historical evidence delineating how Puritanism and Calvinism required ceaseless toil to prove to everyone that you were a good person destined for heaven. Then those religions were replaced by America's new religion of business, so we felt compelled to prove to everyone that we were a financial success destined for a perfect life by appearing as if everything is always going our way. She explains how being a loser went from meaning you were just the one of the two parties who didn't prevail in that single situation to becoming something that you fundamentally are. I've always thought of a loser as something you could be, probably because I was very into current music in 1994 when Beck's song I'm a Loser Baby came out. But I didn't know until just today that soy un pedrador means I'm a loser in Spanish. How did I miss that? I'm a loser, baby, so why don't you kill me? Crazy with the cheese whiz. The lyrics to that song are pretty weird or creative, however you want to think about it. You get a parking violation and a maggot on your sleeve, a slab of turkey neck, and it's hanging from a pigeon wing. Trade the cash for the beef, for the body, for the hate. And my time is a piece of wax falling on a termite. Also, if you've ever seen Never Been Kissed with Drew Barrymore from 1999, she gets a stamp on her hand which transfers and becomes loser written on her forehead after she falls asleep on the back of her hand. And everyone shouts, loser, to her in the hallways, which of course is probably related to Smash Mouth, who I love's 1999 song, All-Star. She was looking kinda dumb with her finger and her thumb in the shape of an L on her forehead. I love the 90s, and I've seen Smash Mouth in person. So after it became an idea that a person could just be a loser, the idea that your inner worth is tied to your commercial success became cemented in everyone's minds, and children started being taught from an early age to disguise sadness, and adults became heavily invested in keeping up appearances. It didn't used to be that way. What if it weren't anymore? Somehow. That'd be cool. Unfortunately, one could make the case that it's getting worse than ever. There's the new term for the phenomenon of effortless perfection. Have you heard of this? You have to look like you're flawless, beautiful, perpetually young, smart, organized, fit, well-rounded, popular, and humble, and that everything in your life is going perfectly. Never let your face betray that something is wrong. Never let people see how hard you have to work to get where you are. The social code is to always say that everything is great. While it's true that you probably don't want to unload all your burdens on the Walmart greeter who asks how you are, and I do think there's some benefit to having a fun response to that question like, never better or best day of my life, is there a way to honor your heartaches and struggles and losses and still feel good about your life? This idea of effortless perfection is less about perfection as it is about victory, about being the kind of person who wins. It's about not being a loser. Susan Cain says the struggle is to see our sorrows and longings not as indications of secret unworthiness, but as features of humanity. And that embracing our inner loser, as well as winner, is the key to meaning, creativity, and joy. What do you think? Arthur Brooks wrote one of my favorite books called From Strength to Strength. I talked about it a lot in episode 130, Bucket List 2.0. If you haven't upgraded your bucket list yet, I would recommend it. I have a free guide on my website under free resources that can help if you're ready for a better bucket list. Anyway, he teaches classes about happiness at Harvard and is one of those people who I just admire and jive with the way he thinks. He's brilliant. In his new book, Build the Life You Want, that he co-authored with Oprah, he explains what he calls the 3 macronutrients of happiness. In order to have true happiness, you need sufficient levels of enjoyment, satisfaction, and purpose. I'd recommend you check out the book or at least listen to him being interviewed to learn more because he does a great job of explaining how different enjoyment is from pleasure and how to create deeply satisfying experiences. Hint, you need some unpleasantness, discomfort, hard work, and uncertainty to end up with satisfaction in the end. I'll put a link in the show notes to the book and an interview he did on Peter Attia's podcast, which was excellent. If you didn't know, I've been working hard to get full transcript show notes done for all these episodes. So if that's helpful to you, they all have clickable links in them. When you get your macronutrients of enjoyment, satisfaction, and purpose right, you are deeply and meaningfully joyful. Purpose, by the way, is the protein of the happiness macros. It's the most important one. You can go for a while without enjoyment and a short time without satisfaction, but purpose is essential. True happiness is not about appearing perfect, which is really just about not looking like a loser. It's about looking inside and knowing that you're on the right track and that your life makes sense, which doesn't come from denying your sorrow or longing or disappointments or failures. Here is one of Arthur Brooks's teachings that I think is potentially life-changing. I would encourage you to try it if you feel so inclined. He says that while gratitude works and gratitude journals are good and you should keep them and remember the happy fluffy cloud you saw, the most powerful thing you can do for your happiness and your life is to journal about your negative experiences. Keep what he calls a failure and disappointment journal. Journaling about our negative experiences dramatically improves our genuine happiness and the quality of our lives. Whenever something is bugging you in a big way or making you really sad, don't try to sweep it under the rug or force yourself to think happy thoughts. Write about it in your failure and disappointment journal. Marissa didn't return my text. Nobody RSVP'd to come to my party. I didn't get the job I thought the interview went really well for. I froze and didn't get my point across in today's meeting. I missed my daughter's audition. Whatever it is, every time something comes up, you write it down. Then you leave 2 blank spaces after it. This is the important part. You need to remember to come back to it. Write the dates and come back to it often or put a reminder on your calendar. In 30 days, you come back to the first empty spot and write down what you learned from that negative experience. What did you learn over the course of 30 days from that experience? The second blank space is to come back to in 6 months' time and write down something good that happened as a direct result of this seemingly negative event. It might be something like, I didn't get the job I really wanted and thought I really came across as my best self in the interview. 30 days later, what you learned is that you thought you'd be crushed for the rest of your life, but it was really only 4 or 5 days, and then you started to feel okay again. And that you really can find a way to trust that things happen for a reason, and that it was worth applying even if the rejection stung. Then 6 months later, you can come back and write down that the good thing that happened was that you found a different job that allows more flexibility in your schedule than you would have had at the other place. And you never would have had this position on your radar if you had accepted an offer from the other company. The point is, if we don't get methodical about our failures and disappointments and revisit them on a set schedule, we'll miss the opportunity to learn and grow from them. Our failures and disappointments are soy and pedrador, crazy with the cheese whiz loser moments are our best opportunities to infuse our lives with meaning, satisfaction, and even enjoyment. In other words, true happiness. Arthur says if you do this consistently, you'll start looking forward to disappointing experiences so that you can write them down and use them as an opportunity to make your life better. It's alchemizing bad to good, better than good. In fact, it's making it so there really isn't bad, just feelings, experiences, and information. We are meant to have emotional experiences, but we're not meant to spin out and go off the rails from them. We should treat emotional information as data to learn from. Oprah says it beautifully in her book with Arthur that emotions are just a tap on the shoulder that tells us that we need to pay attention to something. It's up to us and our prefrontal cortex to decide what we want to do with that information. Positive emotions are good at reminding us that we want to do whatever caused them again. Negative emotions don't feel good, but they have the potential to make us way happier than positive emotions do. Weird, right? So you want to be a loser. The more you lose, the happier and wiser you get. If you keep track and write down what you learned and how your life is better at 30 days and 6 months afterward. You're not at the mercy of your haphazard emotions or chasing a fleeting feeling. You're making deliberate decisions based on data. Happiness is not a feeling. It's what you do. It's what you choose to do with your feelings. In Bittersweet, Susan Cain talks about other ways to use emotions, especially those that come from grief, loss, sorrow, and longing to make your life better. She talks about transforming your pain into beauty and your longing into belonging. One way to help deal with huge pain or generational trauma is to find a way to help others currently facing similar trouble. Use your tragedy as a way to help others. I think this would add purpose along with some satisfaction and enjoyment to your experience. She also talks about learning the lessons from your longings, sorrows, obsessions, and other bitter emotions. What lesson is this emotion trying to teach you? We can learn a lot from sadness, longing, hatred, loathing, frustration, fear, inadequacy, loneliness, and resentment. Jealousy is a great teacher of what you really want for yourself. Judgment is a great teacher of what you don't want or what you fear you are but wish you weren't. In her book, she says, maybe you're thrilled when your children laugh but suffer when they cry, which tells you that you haven't truly accepted that tears are part of life and that your kids can handle them. Maybe you carry the griefs of your parents or grandparents. Maybe your body is hyper-vigilant and you must find a way to transform the pain of the ages. Maybe you deeply mourn your breakups, which tells you that separation is the most fundamental of the heartaches, but also that attachment is your deepest desire. That you might transcend your grief when you perceive how connected you are with all the other humans who struggle to transcend theirs, just like you. End quote. She has 10 bittersweet teachings in her book. This is what they are. 1. Follow your longing where it's telling you to go. 2. Transform your pain into beauty, your longing into belonging. 3. The art we love best and the music we love most express our yearning for a perfect and beautiful world. 4. Upbeat tunes make us dance around our kitchen and invite friends for dinner. Sad music makes us want to touch the sky. 5. Whatever pain you can't get rid of, make it your creative offering. 6. Creativity has the power to look pain in the eye and turn it into something else. 7. Our oldest problem is the pain of separation. Our deepest dream is the desire for a reunion. 8. You don't have to believe in the deities of the ancient books to be transformed by spiritual longing. 9. We transcend our grief only when we realize how connected we are with all the other humans who struggle to transcend theirs. And 10. We're just humans, flawed and beautiful and longing for love. I'm not sure how helpful those are to you without the rest of the context of her book, but I think that they're great. How can you make whatever pain you can't get rid of your creative offering? How can you look pain in the eye and turn it into something else? Despite what we're conditioned to believe, life doesn't have to be all smiles, fireworks, and flash mob dance parties. We don't always have to turn our frown upside down immediately or ignore our sadness. Next time you experience the tap on the shoulder of negative emotion, you don't have to try to escape from them with destructive behavior like binging. But you also don't need to tell yourself to look on the bright side or think positive if you don't want to. Susan David says that our instinct to tell ourselves or someone else facing difficulty that it's not that bad is part of the tyranny of positivity. Because the conventional view is that some emotions like happiness are good and others like despair, fear, and anger are bad. While some emotions are certainly more pleasurable than others, it's counterproductive to think of them as being either good or bad. Feelings just are. Encouraging ourselves or someone else to pretend to be happy, brave, or optimistic when they're not is unkind. It communicates that their experience is invalid and their struggle is something that needs to be hidden from the world. Susan also says that research shows that pushing difficult emotions aside actually makes them stronger. It's called the amplification effect. The feelings are like a smoke detector signaling that something is wrong and needs to be addressed. Insisting that you don't hear the alarm won't make the fire go away. It amplifies the danger. We can and should all feel happy sometimes, but tough emotions are integral to a life fully lived. The only way to avoid disappointment is to live a life without aspirations. The only way to avoid heartbreak is to live a life without love. Nassim Taleb wrote a book called Anti-Fragile. You've probably heard of the concept before. Just as a reminder, you can be fragile, a little jostle, and you might break. You can be resilient. You can take a few bumps. It's much more difficult to break you. Or you can be anti-fragile. The more you get kicked around, the stronger you get. Instead of fragile, the side up on your box says, drop me, preferably down a flight of stairs. That's the thing that strengthens you. Trees are often anti-fragile. Winds and other difficult conditions force them to become more sturdy. One example Nassim uses in the book is a candle flame versus a wildfire. They're both fires, but the wind extinguishes a candle, but fuels a wildfire. So what fuels you? In my Heroic Coach certification group, we have a chant we do together sometimes where we say, OMS, OMS, OMMS, obstacles make me stronger. When you really get that life is supposed to be hard and it's the hard stuff that makes you more of who you want to be, then you become a wildfire. Watch out, world. Everything is fuel for your growth. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen today. I hope it's been worth your time to consider how negative emotions and experiences don't need to be denied or swept aside, and we don't need to think happy thoughts all the time. The day I heard Arthur Brooks recommend that people start a failure and disappointment journal, I went on Amazon and bought the first one I saw that I thought looked good. It's just a blank journal with a leather cover with a tree embossed on the front. You can see all the branches and leaves above and all the roots going down below. It seemed like the perfect visual for my loser journal, and I was very excited to start using it. It actually took a while for some failures and disappointments to crop up, but I knew that they would, and I wrote about them and look forward to going back in 30 days and 6 months to complete the process. I hope you'll consider doing the same. We are all losers sometimes, and that's the very thing that can make us better if we let it. Next week, we're going to talk about how using a hospice approach to life can make your life better right now. Until then, reject the tyranny of positivity, embrace your inner loser, become a wildfire, and don't be normal. Thank you so much for tuning into the Health Courage Collective podcast. I am truly honored that you have paid me the enormous compliment of your time and attention. I would be so grateful if you would share this podcast with someone you know and subscribe so you never miss an episode. This podcast is for entertainment and information purposes only. Statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Christina Hackett and producers, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse events by use of information contained herein. If you think you have a medical problem, consult a licensed physician.
Fentanyl. It could be hiding anywhere, including in your house, including in your medicine cabinet, or maybe at a friend's house when you're hanging out, playing games, and get offered a pill. Don't take chances. If a drug didn't come from a pharmacy directly to you, you can find fentanyl using a simple strip you can pick up at your local pharmacy. Don't take it until you test it, because fentanyl can be hiding anywhere. Brought to you by the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Mental Disabilities.